Welcome. Welcome to another broadcast. So glad that you guys can join us today. And we are just getting started here. Y'all, sorry for my delay there, my tardiness. I was just getting some things together here. And now I'm just waiting for this, what I'm doing to finish up. So we're going to get started. It's going to be I'm looking forward to this broadcast just like we did with Mother's Day. We want to do the same thing for our fathers, and we want to give people the opportunity to call in and give a shout out to our great fathers that are out there. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, there are some great fathers that are out there, and we want to give people the opportunity to give them a shout out. And we'll be doing that in a few moments. Okay, we're gonna open up, kind of giving you an update on what I've been doing, off camera and all of that, and we'll be talking about that. And give us about another minute or so, and then we're gonna get started. Okay. Big shout out to as people coming into the chat. I see Ernest in the house, and I'm sure we'll have some other people as we go forward. Okay. All right, about another 30 seconds. We're gonna give it that, and then we'll begin here. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you again for tuning in. And like I said, again, my apologies for starting off a little bit late here. I just kind of slow start this weekend, actually, because we had a few things going on all at the same time. And I lost some sleep too in the process. And so when you pull one of these like somewhat all-nighter kind of things, when I tell you it throws you off, oh my goodness. So my weekend, it's been kind of thrown off. But anyway, I hope you guys have had a wonderful weekend. So far, guess what the temperature is right now? It is here in Arizona. We are looking at 108 degrees, and it's supposed to go up to 111. So it's going to be quite warm out there, but we here. We are here, and I finally am getting into the loop. There were some notices. There was a video that I saw on, I don't know if it was TikTok or something like that. And someone did a wonderful job in kind of outlining all the Juneteenth celebrations that were going on throughout Phoenix, in the Phoenix area and all of that. And I was like, man, it would be nice to go, attend one of those. I chose not to, simply because, right now you got these crazy protests and stuff going on right now. And you remember I've been telling y'all, I said, we're in the day right now where you're going to have to think once, twice, three times, or maybe when it comes to deciding on attending events that are fairly large gatherings, because we're in a time right now, of course, where, these fools and crazy people out here, they're looking for any and every opportunity to act up and to cause stuff. And unfortunately, it is going to have an impact on, some of the things that you do, so like going out to a function or whatever. So if you're one of those that went out and you had a wonderful time, I'm glad you did, but it was just for me, we just kind of issued out a caution, basically, that, just kind of watch yourself when you're out here. And unfortunately, you had this convergence of Father's Day, Juneteenth, and then these No More Kings or whatever protests and all of that going on, converging all at once on the same weekend. So it just, unfortunately, you just have to use wisdom at the end of the day. So today, what we're going to do, like I said, I'm just going to kind of update you on some of the things I've been doing, some of the things I've been thinking about. And in a little bit, we're going to open the phone lines and invite people to call in and, to give a shout out to your father. And fortunately, we did have quite a few people call in on Mother's Day. So this is going to be an interesting test, because usually Mother's Day is the one that people will react to the most, even though I had to do a little bit of begging on that one to get people to call in. Father's Day, however, is one that's a little bit different, and so this is going to be quite interesting to see if we get anybody to call in. It would be nice. I'll share a little bit about my dad and my experience with him and me being a father as well. We'll talk about that as well. But yeah, so to get things started here, as we always do, we're going to recommend you, for all of our fathers, and mothers and our children as well. You want to make sure that you are staying healthy and well. All right. And to do that, you got to make sure you're doing healthy and well things, right? Well, we're here to help you. Go to sambatree.com and you will find that we have quite a few things here that you can check out here. We're highlighting today, or, these few days here, black seed oil and the importance of it. Now, we have done videos on the importance of black seed in the past, and we quite extensive videos on it. But I'm gonna tell you right now, we are in a day right now where this is essential. It's literally essential for you to have this added to you, regardless if you get it from Samba Tree or not. You definitely need to have this in there, and there's many reasons why. All right. We will. I think we have some video. Those videos that I'm referring to. I'll see if I can link to them, and I'll put them maybe in the community page maybe later on today or whatever, just so you can see all the benefits, or you can look it up yourself. You can look it up yourself. And, this is the house of all things healthy and wellness related. And so we have everything from coconut water powder to cat's claw powder, all kinds of powders and bitters and things of that nature, teas and things for your body. We believe in 100%. In other words, products that you're going to put in your body and on your body, they got to be natural. All right. You can't call yourself a natural store if your stuff ain't natural. And so this is what we have here. So do us a little favor and, come on by, see what you like. And if it's something here that catches your eye or catches interest, make sure you stop by and check it out. Of course, we got sea moss, black soap, all kinds of stuff, different types of capsules. All natural. All this stuff is natural. Fruit juices, 100% with no additives. We even have our own line of natural laundry detergent. All kinds of things. So again, the website is sambatree.com. All right. And so let's go ahead and get into it. I did this little cartoon here. This is what I was kind of waiting on. It ain't quite where I want it, but this is like a quick one here. Well, I will tell you this. I know traditionally, when I was in the church world, Mother's Day was always a big thing, right? All the mothers would come in and they would have their big hats on, and, the preacher, he would get up there and do his old, Mother's Day sermon that would always loop in Ruth and, Boaz and Eve and, all the women mentioned in the Bible. They would just kind of loop them all together. And so they would do that. Father's Day was a little bit different. It was a little bit different. They would just jump to saying God is the father of all, and kind of made it like that. It wasn't really made, in my experience, wasn't really made personable, And so in considering, kind of the direction that particularly the black church has been going into lately, this is kind of where it is today. This is kind of where it is today. The preacher, he is what he is. these days. And, the church is what it is. And the few men that are there, they are feeling that, hey, this ain't the place for me, and I'm telling you, there's a lot of dads out there who are, this is the reality, that are making their way to the exit because this is the vibe that they're feeling, in many of these churches today. And so I just thought, hey, why not make a cartoon about with it? I may redo this one and put it in the community page. So, if I had thought about it earlier, I would have already had it up there. But anyway, it is what it is. But yeah, I thought it was something. But it is quite telling, too. I mean, you can't deny it. I mean, this is where it is today. When I think about Father's Day, when of course, obviously, I got to start with my own father, who was, in my opinion, he was a great man for me. And despite whatever imperfections he may had or may felt that he thought he had, he was a great example for me. All right, and the other people that he helped and blessed along the way, that was just the icing on the cake. But for me, that was the person I needed for my own life. This is a man who was born and raised down in South Carolina. And, so he had the front row seat to Jim Crow and all of those experiences like that. And he was able to take all of those experiences and the knowledge he obtained from that and bring it up with him up into the North, like many other black folks during that time that were migrating or made their way up in the North. And, from there, he established himself, by getting a job and then staying with his part of his family that was already living up here. And, like I said, getting a job and all that. Then he eventually brought my mother up here. And then, they struggled like all other young couples, a lot of young couples do. And he was able to find their footing in life and move on. And but I remember, my father, he wasn't someone that you would see, at least I didn't, show a lot of outward affection. But I never saw that as him not loving me any less. I never interpreted it as that, like I said, anytime I would see the show Good Times, I mean, my dad, he reminded me a lot of James Evans. I mean, just a lot. Anytime I would see James Evans, that's the first person come to my mind is my dad. James Evans, he wasn't, when you would see him, on the show or whatever, he wasn't someone that was very outwardly affectionate, but you cannot deny that this man didn't loved his family. I mean, he would go to bat. He would do whatever it took to protect his family and to let them know, hey, listen, I'm with you. I got you. I'm in your corner, all that kind of thing. And that's how my dad was. And, I was able, through him, I was able to learn how to, to love and support your wife. And that's where my primary lessons came from, just for my own marriage that I have today. And clearly is working. I mean, we're closing in on 30 years of marriage. So, the lessons must have been pretty good then, let's see. He was someone that, when it came down to, questioning things, he didn't at first, he went through like a lot of other people. He had his doubts. And I'm talking specifically about, his time in the church, because his dad was in the churches. In fact, his father was a bishop of over several churches down in South Carolina. And so my dad kind of just followed suit with that. And so, he got away from the church thing for a while, but then he, eventually came back and, really dove into church life and all of that. But, he began to start noticing some things like many of us do, particularly men. We started noticing certain things, certain patterns within the church that really was like, wait a minute, this ain't adding up, because the Bible says this, but I'm seeing this ain't matching. And then soon as you start noticing those things, of course, that makes you public enemy number one. So he, got his share of backlash and stuff like that from the very people that he, that said that they were in his corner. I saw this man and the amount of suffering that he went through with that. I mean, even some of the people, I mean, and, you know, I've shared our testimony many times, you know, the church that I grew up in was a predominantly white church, but you did also have a significant number of black people in there too. And I've seen firsthand how black folks will turn on you just like that because you're not in alignment with the mind of God in the house. They turn on you, flip on you just in a minute. So I was able to witness that. As hard of a lesson that was for me to see that, it was one that I would never forget because I saw the impact of it. And I learned at an early young age, you know, how you can't put your trust in that. And I also was able to witness a man, in my case, my father, and how he navigated those waters. You understand? Because see, he didn't have the internet to go to. He didn't have TikTok to vent to. The only person that he had in his life that he can really talk to and let all of this stuff out was his wife, my mother. And I watch how they both worked as a team in navigating through that, while at the same time wanting me to learn from it. But, you know, at the same time, being careful to say, hey, listen, don't paint everybody the same way, because that doesn't speak for the majority, right? So they did that too. So there were things that I was able to learn from him, even how to navigate that. And so, yeah, he had his questions and all of that. And he and then, you know, watching him as he got sicker and all of that. And, you know, and also watching how the church handled that. You know, for those of you who follow my platform, I've talked about my own experience with that, especially when it comes in the area of healing. You know, when they talk about, you know, the Bible mentions that you shall lay hands on the sick and then watch them recover and all of that. I didn't see that for my father. And the excuse that they basically gave is, well, maybe you didn't do this, or maybe it's always something that you didn't do. But it's like, okay, not everybody falls in that category. You know what I mean? Not everybody falls in that category at all. You know, and you know, regardless of what it is, it's like, well, you didn't come to church enough, or you skipped a few Sundays, or you didn't truly give what you need to give in the offering and stuff. I mean, I've heard so many excuses of that when people try to make these types of excuses, and that really stuck with me, and it gave me a determination at the end of the day to make sure that I don't just accept things as they're given to me, that it's important to challenge all of these things and, you know, to ask questions. And that is another lesson that I learned. Even with that, I learned from that as well. And I was able to pass that down to our children, and I'm watching them in their own way, you know, do the same thing. So, yeah, so my father did, in fact, teach me a lot. You know, and I've also had an opportunity. One of the things that he did, and I've shared this as well, is he would, you know, we would go, him and I and my mother, you know, at times we would go visit the prisons, and we had an opportunity to sit down and to listen to and to talk to inmates, and they were all, unfortunately, all black, you know, like Trenton, you know, prisons around Trenton area, you know, we was Trenton, New Jersey, around that area. And Bordentown, Bordentown, that was the one I think I mainly went to, but they also had one, Trenton as well. I think they went to, I don't know if I've actually went to that one, but Bordentown I remember. And I think there was another one I went to. But I had the opportunity to listen to these young men who were in prison who didn't have a father, and to see the impact of it. Now, that was at that time regulated, you know, when you know, during those days, you know, when that was, you saw a lot of that just within the prison population. And to a certain extent, you still see that, right? But today it's become even more of an issue, where you have numbers of these young men and women who are growing up without a father or a father figure. and it's becoming a serious issue, a very serious issue. So what we're watching today, unfortunately, is a generation of people who are trying to figure things out without the input of an actual father. Again, this does not speak of every black person, okay? So please don't come in here think I'm generalizing saying all black people fall in this category, because that is not the truth, okay? But what I am saying, this is an issue that, yes, not only does it need to be talked about, but we do need to deal with it and find ways that we can fix it, you know? And so, and it's not an easy thing, but in other ways it is an easy thing. It starts here, you know, in your mind, you know, and making decisions. What we're seeing today down when we go on social media, we're seeing numbers of men who are taking to the internet and are calling out a lot of the stuff that they're seeing within the black community right now. The hottest topics right now are criticizing what they're seeing in black women. Okay. And that is, you know, the points that they're bringing up are valid. You know, they're bringing up some valid points. However, I do suggest that I do know that there needs to be a bit of balance to that as well. And because it's one thing for a man to call out the things that aren't right, right? But another function of the man, or I would say a father, is to build. Is you got to build something, right? If your whole platform is just based off of just calling out what you don't like, and that's all there is to it, then what's the point? I mean, anybody can do that. But what about adding a component of building, right? Building. What are you building? And I'm not just talking about building a career, right? On a personal level, but I'm talking about what are you doing to solve some of the things that you're seeing that are not present. You understand? Because I don't think, and I understand, you know, the whole argument as far as what we don't see in numbers of these black women. I completely get it. Also see the sign that there are deficiencies even when it comes to black men. I get that as well. But what I have noticed is that you got on social media, at least, there's these two separate platforms that are 110% invested in calling each other out and saying what they don't like. And now we have this movement where, you know, a number of the men are saying, hey, listen, then screw it. I'll just be alone and by myself and happy without them. And then the other side, they're saying the same thing. But you, as well as I know, that's not healthy. You can't grow a community with that. We know the problems exist. We get that, right? But what can we do? But for survival's sake, there does need to be something going on that to try to repair that, right? Because, and my point is that there has to be an element on what do we do to repair that? You understand what I'm saying? And I don't think for the amount of humility, or I would say the lack thereof, I don't know if we're there yet. But I will tell you that the fracturing that's happening right now, if you're really concerned, you know, about the preservation of a quote unquote black community, this ain't it. Part of it is calling out the bad stuff, right? Or the things we don't like. But the other part has to be, what do we do to repair? You understand? And that's the part I don't see. And so that's another thing as being a father, responsibility of a father. You know, I can spend all day talking about the things I don't like my children doing and what I see in them doing, but that's not, that's not enough. I also gotta praise them for the things that they are doing right, and help them be the first line of offense. Basically, I'm running with you and showing you how to do it right. You understand what I'm saying? But right now, what we're seeing is there's a lot of pointing and saying that what we don't like, but there's not enough examples of how can we do it right. You understand? And so a father has to do both. A father has to be one that is not afraid to point out the wrong, right? That's only one part of it. But you also got to be a person that's got to be willing to get in the trenches to provide and to actually build a lot of times from the ground up, on how to and build some real solutions on how we can fix these things. Right. So that's the issue there. But there are numbers of great examples out there of men who are doing it right. And that's the purpose of this whole broadcast, is we want to give a shout out to those who are doing it right and to hear from you. And I'll put the phone number up in a little bit, but just real quick to kind of give you an idea of what I've been up to. The research group, I actually uploaded a video yesterday for them. So if you're part of our research team, make sure you check that out. What we've been looking at is, I have been, in case you haven't noticed, lately I've been really focused on the human body, right? And just the different functionalities of the human body. For example, we're about to offer a free class. It's going to be a weekly class that I'm going to offer through Saba University. It's free, and we're going to cover all the functions of the brain. All the functions of the brain. We're going to divide it all up, and we're going to have a discussion on each part of the brain. This is something that, quite honestly, when you think about it, we should have all gotten this in grade school. We should have all gotten this, but unfortunately we didn't. Because think about it. We're in this world of AI right now, right? Where everybody's just fascinated. I can ask AI anything and it will just give me my answers, and it will build apps. It will build this. It will do this. It will figure this out and all this stuff. And we're just sitting there all amazed, not realizing that AI or computers are based off of this. All of it is based off of your brain, the human mind. There would be no AI if it wasn't for this. Why do you think they call it AI? It's artificial intelligence. Drop off the artificial. This is the intelligence. This is the intelligence. That's artificial. Okay. I don't know if that's resonated with you or you got that, but they're telling you that this is the intelligence. That's artificial. So yes, AI is cool and, fun or whatever to play with or whatever, but always remember, this is where the intelligence begins. Here, you can learn just about anything you pretty much put your mind to. AI is just an assistant, and that's how you got to see it as. But it's a collection of human thought. It's a collection of human research and reasoning and all of that. That's all it is. They just put it all in the box and presented it back to you, and you looking at it like, wow, this is pretty cool, but not realizing that all of that potential is right in here, right? So what I've been doing is basically thinking about just scaling back, and I'm challenging myself with this. I'm saying, if I had the opportunity to build, going back to what I was saying, to build a Black community, how would I do it? How would I build a Black community? If I had to just scrap everything, how would I build it? So I've taken myself all the way back, and I'm going back to just our physiology and starting from there, starting with the brain and all that stuff. And one of the things we were talking about in the research group was, and I've touched on it here on this platform too, your skin, I'm talking about Black folks now, your skin is a good indicator to tell you what you need. You remember, I've shared this many times. If someone will not buy a Ferrari, if they are planning on using it to go off-roading, right? It's a sports car. Everything about that sports car is designed meticulously to be optimized when you're on a flat road surface. That's what it's designed for, right? If I want a Jeep, the Jeep is optimized not necessarily for flat surfaces, but for off-roading, right? Well, our bodies are no different. Our bodies are no different. When I have a lot of melanin in my skin, what that tells me is that I am supposed to immerse myself in sunlight. That's what that tells me. If I'm a white person, or not necessarily white, if you have a lighter complexion, notice I said lighter, I didn't say fairer, because fairer means good. No, your skin is good regardless, okay? So we say light and we say dark, okay? Fair, that's a whole nother, no, we don't say fair here, okay? All of us got fair skin, regardless if it's dark skin or middle skin or light skin or whatever, it's all fair. But we're talking about Right now we're talking skin. So if someone has light skin, what that says is they don't need to be in the sunlight as much. It's not a deficiency, because that's something I used to repeat as well. Oh, they're deficient. No, that's just how they're made. So it's not a deficiency. It is simply how they were made. So they don't require as much sunlight as we do, right? So for us as darker skinned folks, the way I'm designed, the way this Ferrari is designed in a way it's telling me, Dwayne, your body, the way your body is designed, you need optimum sunlight. And I remember how, and I saw this video recently, it was on social media, it's a bunch of black people, they were laughing at all these white people who were just sitting out laying in the sun, and they're like, and then they turned the camera over to all the black people, they're laying in the sun too, but they all covered up and got umbrellas and all that stuff. What you're doing is you're not maximizing your body. You're not to that degree, you're not maximizing how your body is created. And just something as simple as sunlight exposure, it is connected to so many things in your body, so many things, from your immune system to your vision to how you think and all of that stuff. Your body is connected, sunlight is connected to all of that. So you have to have, your body is telling you, every time you see this beautiful skin, it is telling you, if it's dark like mine, it's telling you, you need to be in the sunlight a lot. That's what it's telling you. Likewise, in our video that I did last night for our research group, our noses, the way our noses, I don't want to get too deep in this, but for those of us who originate out of sub-Saharan Africa, many of us have the mean shape and size of our noses tend to be wider. Why are they wider? Because our ancestors, basically in that region, they lived in a climate that was not only hot, but it was humid. So when you are breathing in that humidity, it just goes straight to your lungs, right? White people, on the other hand, because reason why their noses tend to be a little more narrow is because of the fact that the way their bodies are constructed, that air, when it comes in their nose, it has to be warmed up. So when it's passing through those narrow nasal passages, it actually warms up just enough so that when it hits the lungs and all of that, it's already warmed up, and then it ties into so many things. And that also applies to people who live in desert climates, like the Choctaw that lived out here in the Southwest. It also ties into when you get into East Africa, like the Somalians, or Ethiopians as well. In Africa, now let's go back to Africa. In Africa, you have all kinds of diversity, right? I just mentioned East Africans. East Africans, when you look at their body type, they tend to be taller, right? And they tend to, and why is that? When you are taller and leaner, you radiate heat more. In other words, when the sun and the UV rays, when they're hitting your body and you have that body type, it actually radiates, or it doesn't, you don't have enough mass here to absorb. It will absorb just enough, but not a whole lot, because you're lean. You tend to be lean, right? That's why when I was growing up, I would look at these videos of people in Africa, particularly like in Ethiopia and that East Africa, whatever, and they all covered up. And I'd be like, man, it's hot. How are they wearing all this stuff? They're wearing all this stuff. They got to be hot. Again, my Western mindset. And I would look at them, and then I even dropping a drop of sweat. Well, again, their physiology, the way they're built, they don't need that sunlight. They can take that sunlight, but because they tend to be on the leaner side, that sunlight, it reflects, it radiates, right? Now, when you start getting into sub-Saharan Africa, for example, or you can look at some of these other areas, we're leaner, right? We're sub-Saharan Africans also tend to be leaner, right? Let me put a bookmark there. When you go to some of these other groups, bookmark, we're going to get back to sub-Saharan Africa. When you look at some of these other groups, let's take, for example, Scandinavians, or, going up in that part of Europe, or where the Eskimos live and all of that. they tend to have a little more stocky bodies. Well, why is that? Again, when that sunlight that they get, the little sunlight that they get, what it does, they have more mass so that it can absorb that to keep their bodies warmer, right? That's what you have. Now, let's go back to sub-Saharan Africa, right? I know I'm taking you all over the place. This is all related to what we're going to be talking about. Now, let's go back to sub-Saharan Africa. Sub-Saharan Africa, the mean body size is lean. Yeah, it rhymes. It is a leaner body type, right? But the nostrils tend to be like mine, a little bit wider, because the climate down there, it was not only hot, but it was humid, right? So when you look at our bodies, that our bodies are indicators and they tell us kind of the things we need. Now, what has happened, unfortunately, is that introducing Western culture, we got all mixed in, right? So you got black bodies that have these different things going on, right? That's a combination of us mixing in with Europeans and each other and all of that other stuff, right? But also another contributor is food. Food is a huge contributor to all of this stuff. And so it's literally mixing and messing up a lot of our genetic connections and stuff that we had originally. So we shouldn't really be celebrating, yeah, man, look at that girl. She thick. Look at that. She thick. Yeah, look at, look, she thick, y'all. We shouldn't be celebrating that. Because what you got are people that are very big, right? And you got big nostrils and all of that. And it's not, there's something going on that's off there. If you go all the way back and look at these old paintings of Africans as they were coming off those slave ships, a lot of them were very lean, right? Because that's what we look like, right? There's a few exceptions. There's some pockets of tribes that, they prided themselves in being big. But for the most part, we tend to be a very lean people. And so it's the food that played a big role, along with stress. Stress is another thing, because stress can also make changes to your genetic structure over a long period of time. You can literally pass down stress. A mother can pass down stress to her child. You can do that. That they have looked at this and they have found that, yes, this can happen. So a combination. So this is when we say obesity, well, that can be passed down. Well, not exactly. It's the conditions that create to obesity, like stress, like eating habits and things like that. Those are the things that can be passed down, right? But your mind, on the other hand, you can always fix that. And so, most of the time, especially if you need counseling or whatever, but for the most part, the mindset, you can always adjust that. So all of that, I gave you a whole lot there. That's just a little bit. And so what I'm doing is starting from there, and I'm like, all of these things I just mentioned to you, they're also tied to our diets, for example. So what are the top 10 things, fruits and vegetables, that we need to be eating that should be standard for people like us? What are the top 10 fruits and vegetables? And I actually did a post talking about that. And I outlined all the different things, understanding the specific needs of our body. What are the things that we need? What are the absolute fruits and vegetables we need to have that's standard? Okay. So I actually talked about that. I did another post talking about watermelon, all the different benefits. Why are people need watermelon? You know what I mean? It's not just, it just tastes good. No, this is something that is a requirement. It's a requirement. You need to have that. Another thing on that list, and this is where I'm challenging myself now, is okra. I can't stand okra. But okra was another part of what okra does. It reduces the spikes, sugar spikes in your blood system. If you ever looked at West African diets, you notice that unlike when you look at all these Western diets that they eat, for breakfast they eat pancakes and muffins and all that other stuff, right? Well, a lot of us, unfortunately, have fallen into that trap as well, living out here in the West. But no, when you get back to the original state, when you look at a lot of these diets that, a lot of people in West Africa region or, Central and South Africa, when you look at their original diets, what they would consider breakfast was like plants and fruits and vegetables, things like that. That was their original. A lot of their breakfast, for example, they tend to be on the savory side. You don't really see a lot of like muffins and all that stuff. They may have like some sweet breads, but if it's sweet, it's like sweetened with maybe with fruit juice or maybe honey or something like that, right? And so all of that being said, there's so much more I could share with you, but all that being said, what I'm trying to do is, okay, let me develop something, some kind of action plan or something that, on how we are to live. Just the whole nine, right? I talked about the heat and why sunlight is so important, right? But also you see in the background, you see my humidifier down there, right? With nostrils like ours, it is imperative for us to make sure that we're getting a fair amount of humidity. And when we are lacking that, it does have it does impact how we think. It impacts our skin. It impacts different organs in our body and all of that. And, so we can't live like everybody else in that regard. You understand? So like when you turn on the heat, for example, in your home in the wintertime, the heat is, it's drying. It takes out a lot of that moisture, right? Likewise, the air conditioning, it also takes out a certain percentage of moisture as well. So it takes that out. We can't live like that. So if you live in a climate like I live in a higher altitude and I live in a desert, it's imperative. I can live without the humidity. I can exist. But again, getting back to the Ferrari example I gave earlier, but am I maximizing my life? No. I got to make sure I'm understanding why my nostrils are this way. Why is my skin this way? So I'm taking full advantage of the sunlight, but at the same time, I need to make sure that my body's taking in a fair amount of humidity as well. All right. Because that's all tied into maximizing my body. So all of that telling you, this is where my mind is right now when I'm talking about building something and being a father. That's taking it to the extreme. But my point is that as men, as fathers, this is how we're built. We're built to build, to think this way, and to look at problems and figure out solutions. That's how we're built, and that's how we're supposed to be operating. Not just falling in this trap where we're just pointing out what people ain't doing and this and that or whatever, but really thinking deeply about a lot of these things that we see in society, in our own lives or whatever, and coming up with creative solutions on how to solve these things. And we should be leading the way in that. So anyway, I just wanted to share all that with you and what I've been doing. But what we're going to do, if you give me a few moments, I'm just going to get set up. Yeah, I got him. I'm going to get set up here. And what I would like to do is we're going to open up the phone lines. Anybody can call in. Okay. Anybody's can call in. Listen, I am not taking your phone number and going to add it to something and you're going to be getting calls from all over the place. I don't do that. Okay. You call in. That's it. If you want to call in as unknown and don't want to identify yourself, I don't care. I just want to hear your voice. And I think a lot of other people too want to hear, people talk about the examples that their father gave them. And, and so just talk about it. I mean, if it's something unfortunate, we can keep it real like that too. You know what I'm saying? But I think we need to flood the zone, if you will, of some positive examples of good fathers that are out there. And we need more people hearing that. So give me a moment here. Let me get set up here. And I'll put some music on here while I get set up here. So just give me a moment here. I'll put the phone number up once I'm good and ready. Okay. So let me see. Let's see. I'm signing in. I am now going. Oh yeah. I'm supposed to do that. Good, 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 good. Okay, I'm going to give you the phone number here in a moment. Okay, so that's on. Okay, I'll just have to do it again. There we go. There's the phone number right there on the screen. Give me a moment here. There we go. All right, so I'm all set up here now. And so, yeah, I'm already here. If anybody would like to call in and talk about your dad, talk about the example he was to you or whatever. Or you can even share about the impact of not having one around. I mean, if you wanted to share that, we can go either way. Okay, we can go either way. We can keep it real, and that's it. I think that would be good to hear from people who to hear these experiences and all of that. And yeah, I'm here for it. So there's the phone number on the screen right now. It is 480-382-9781. Let me make sure that's right there. Hold on. Is that right? Hold on. I want to the right one. You can try calling it, but let me see here. Yeah, that's it. I just wanted to make sure that I was like, wait a minute, I don't remember that number. I do remember changing it though. I just didn't remember if it was that number or not. But yeah, there's the number on the screen again. It is 480-382-9781. And yeah, phone line is open. I'll find some other music to put on while we wait to see if anybody calls in. And I don't know what else I have. I'm trying to find some other music to play here. All right. Yeah, meanwhile, I'm looking at the temperature outside. It is right now 109 degrees. It's 109 degrees out there, y'all. And I was out there earlier. And I'm also doing my push-ups, y'all. I am closing in the 200 push-ups a day. I told you, I'm not playing, man. Like Nicole, she got her thing going on. She losing weight. I'm doing my push-ups. And then I do my stretches and all that. Then I go outside and I just walk on that white sand and just get as much sunlight as possible. Because with that sand, what it does is that white sand, you're getting like double the amount of the UV rays because the sun is reflecting off of that white sand and all of that. So yeah, I take my shirt off and I'm like, bring it. Not out there too long. I'm out there about maybe 40 minutes, and then I come in and yeah, I gotta cool down for a minute because it's hot. And I try to go as early as I can in the daytime because after a while it's a bit too much for real. So. All right, I'm just gonna be here for a little bit, and but I'm not gonna beg anybody either, And but yeah, I just wanted to see if anybody would call in today and give a shout out, to your dad. I've took some time and shared, the impact of my dad in my life. And let's see if there's anybody else out there who's had some similar experience or not. Like I said, we would love to hear from you. The phone number is on the screen, 480-382-9781. We got our first caller here. How you doing?
Hey, happy Father's Day. Happy
Uh,
Father's Day.
well, thank you.
Anyway, I'm just calling in to share with you all about my father. And we have to go way back, doing sharecropping time and all like that when my father was a young man at that time. And basically his education was maybe, I'm going to say, third, fourth grade. Really, the rest of the education that he did get was self-taught, reading by himself and doing all that. He was not ignorant by any means, but he was just self-taught. You know what I'm saying? And what stuck out to me at most about my father, he was a quiet man. He was a gentle man. He did not like confrontation. He would rather sit down and try to work something out before he would respond or act. He was a deep thinker. You know what I mean? Like sometimes I would see him just sitting there, just, you know, his brow would be furrowed or whatever, and he would be thinking, "What's wrong, Dad? What did we call him, Dad? What are you thinking about?" He said, "Oh, I don't know. I'm just trying to figure this thing out." So he wasn't quick to respond. He thought things through before he actually responded. So I was telling someone the other day, I don't remember him raising his voice in our home. There was never any kind of, trauma, it was always a bunch. It was, everything was kind of, now, granted, it wasn't perfect, but he allowed there to be a peace in our home where it wasn't like you see now, where there's just so much going on. You know what I mean? But one thing that stuck out to me was, as a child, he worked in a paper mill. And this was during the time of segregation. So even though he and his brother, my Uncle Ernest, that lived across the street, they got these jobs working in a paper mill. And part of it was they would process the paper stuff that came in, and it would be processed down to become like a mixture that they would make print books from, I guess, from whatever. But they would use the refuse of old books and anything that people brought in. So that was part of what he did. But like I said, it was during segregation. So even though he was working, 8 to 10 hours a day, it still was segregated. So when they had a break and had to eat their lunch, I remember him telling a story that they didn't have tables or anything like that to sit down on. They would have to eat their lunch and sit up in the rafters. They would have like wooden rafters up in the ceiling, and they would climb up there and sit up there swinging their legs, eating their lunch. But they would laugh and talk and tell jokes and have a good time, even though they couldn't eat where the white people ate. And I remember him he would bring something home to his children every day. Now, my older siblings, they tell stories like maybe 10 years, we're 10 years apart almost. They would tell different stories, and mine was different as well. But even when they were little, he would always bring something home. I remember my sister saying he used to ride his bike to work because we didn't have a car at that time. And when he would come home, my mother would say, "Oh, your daddy, get him. He's going to be home. He's going to be home in about 10 minutes." They would go stand by the road, and they would wait to see him coming on his bike, coming from the road. As soon as he would get off, they knew they were looking at his pockets. Like, I know he got something for us. And it would be it would be a piece of candy. It would be something small. And they looked forward to that. They counted on him to bring that bit of joy. Now, he had a rough time at work. You got to eat your lunch swinging in some rafters like animals. But he always brought something home to his children to say, it's going to be okay. I'm all right, and here's a treat. Now, during my time, he was still working at the same place. He had begun to bring home books, stuff that he found in the refuge. He would bring home all kind of books. He would bring home comic books and books about history and books about science. And I remember one time he brought home part of Britannica Encyclopedia. I don't know if everybody remember that, but we had that part of a set of. He would bring home LP records of classical music. we would have Beethoven,
Mm.
we would have Mozart records that people had thrown away. They were still in their cases. These are on 33 LPs because we had a little record. He thought enough of his children. Now y'all hear what I'm saying now. He would think enough of his children that he, as lowly as it may have seemed he was on the totem pole of society, he still kept his children in mind enough to take these things from the refuge and bring home to us. And trust me when I say it affected us. As a young kid, I had read Greek mythology. I knew all of that stuff. I knew Roman mythology from reading these books. I knew he brought home one time a book about the year 1950 and everything that went on historically during that time, who the president was, what wars was going on. And we would sit there and read all that stuff. You know, we went to school, but this was like extra, you know. And then we would put classical music. Back then, during segregation, our house was filled with classical music, all kind of genres of music, jazz, just because he collected that stuff and brought enough of his children. And then, like I said, he was, I wrote it, we had a piano in the home. We made sure that there was something in there that would cultivate, you know, the different things of culture and all like that, records, books, even though he himself, like I said, only had maybe a third or fourth grade education. He wanted to make sure that we would extend ourselves above that. He made sure everybody went to school, and he provided if we wanted, we could have all gone to college as well. So my point in saying all that there's no excuse. Now, this is my humble opinion for people now. There's no excuse. And that, I believe, is part of our history as Black people. When I grew up, and we're talking years ago, it was abnormal to see a house that did not have a father. We thought it was something strange. You don't have a dad? Because we knew that father was there. Now, there were extenuating circumstances, but in most, my friends, my cousins, and everybody I grew up, I had one cousin who her aunt raised her one because her mother had died in childbirth and her father was alcoholic. So her aunt had to take her in. That was so unusual. But men were very present. It wasn't until, I would say, probably was it, and Dwayne, you would know more about this, the timeline, that when the government became a part of the Black culture, if you will, or history, where that father could. But trust me when I say, all the people I knew, they had home. Another thing, my father and my uncle built their houses with their hands. We had a that was a carpenter, and he helped them a little bit, but they built their own homes and built my grandmother's home. They went to work. They bought their first car. They bought together. And then eventually each family got their own car. But in the beginning, these were men who worked with what they had. And I never felt neglected. I never felt I had to live in fear of abandonment or anything like that. Because what did they do? They created an atmosphere of what men should do, and that is of safety. You know, and that was, I think, you always have a safe place to grow up in. You may not have much. You may not have as much as you see white folks have, but we're going to be together. That is the era that I grew up in. So I appreciate that. The older I get, the more I appreciate it. And I hope that you knew how much I did appreciate it. Was he a perfect man? No, he was not a perfect man. But as a child, when I look back on it, he accepted his position and he was very accountable to it. You know, he knew that he had to take care of his family in spite of all the crazy stuff that was going on during that time, during segregation. He still stood as a man and he took care of his family with what he had. And so that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I appreciate you sharing that.
I just want to share that because a lot of people don't hear a lot of that because they see what they see now.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much. It didn't take much, when I say materially, for him to do and fulfill the position that he was created to do. He took what he had, and I respect that. I respect it very much. So anyway, so thank you for allowing me to share, and enjoy the rest of your. Okay.
All right, you too. Thank you so much. Take care. All right.
Okay.
All right. So that was great. I love hearing that. And yeah, great example of what a father, is. And fathers, are not perfect, just like mothers aren't perfect. But, a father that's going to take the pieces that he has and instead of complaining about what he doesn't have, figuring out a way, okay, how can I take these pieces and make a house out of it? How can I take these pieces and make this and that out of it? There's a lot of emphasis I'm seeing, particularly a lot of our younger men and some of our middle-aged men as well, that are like, hey, we are army, we gonna fight, they ready, they want to throw down in the street. But anybody can do that. Anybody can flex their muscles and throw down in the street or whatever. But it does take a special type of person that's going to say, well, instead of me just emoting, right? How about I put my brain to work and figure out some of these problems that I complain about often? It takes a special type of person to do that. And unfortunately, we live in a society today that's centered on everybody emoting in their own way. A lot of times people like to beat up on women they just emotional and all that. Well, men can be too, ready to, okay, now we're going to do a versus. We're going to do this, ready to rock 'em, sock 'em, but it takes a special individual to say, let's put the fist down and let's kind of just in our own corners, let's figure out how we going to build these solutions here. So really appreciate the phone call. Like I said, I'm not into begging. I'm not into begging grown folks especially. So give one more opportunity here. If you want to give a shout out to your father today, this is a place where you can do that. Like I said, it could be a good story. It could be a story in progress or whatever, but here's an opportunity for you to share that. And you may think, oh, it ain't really that much or whatever. But, one thing this generation needs is to hear some positive stories. And if you can contribute to that in any way, I think that would be greatly appreciated. I'm not asking for money here. It's not like I'm asking for, this ain't building fund time. This is a building fund, building up some strong men out here that will take on the task of building with or without the funds. For real, you know what I'm saying? And so that's what I'm trying to do on this little platform here. So I'll give y'all another a minute or so, and then I'm going to keep it moving today. So let me see what else I got here. Let me see what else I got. Hold on, I'm trying to find something. No. I'm trying to find. I'll play that. All right. Like I said, I'm not into begging. I'm turning the phone off. Yeah, that was definitely telling. Definitely telling. Definitely telling. And I think this serves as a very good object lesson here, unfortunately. I know we don't have too many people here on the chat. But definitely is telling. Because I've said this before, what we call black culture or the black community is more of a matriarchal, feminized culture. And it's one that, unfortunately, it's centered on emoting in that way. You know what I mean? Or, putting that kind of energy out, while at the same time, when it comes to men, unfortunately, what would be considered, strong men. I'm not saying they're not present. I'm not saying it at all. There are some. That is something that it's not valued. It's not. And, it's still disappointing. And like I said, it's little things like this that do improve that point, So I hope, if anything, this kind of rings some of that home. You know what I mean? That if you realize that this is where we are, unfortunately, when we talk about Black culture and all of that, we need fathers. We need strong fathers. And I've said that many, many times, and I will repeat it again. There are many great Black fathers that are out there. They are. But we definitely need a whole lot more. So, anyway, so I hope you guys do have a good day, regardless if you're honoring a father or not. I hope you have a good day. All right. So you guys take care, and I'm going to enjoy mine. Take care, and I will catch you next time.